right. Hello, people. Hello, everybody. What's going on? We've got Tim from KeHE. We are just going to get right into it here. A lot of people will be watching this recording after, but a lot of people are here today. So the point of today is all of you have gotten selected for this opportunity for our grocery run the night before the KeHE show, which is honestly one of the craziest opportunities we've ever gotten. This I think will be the event that we've done that has the highest number of buyers and distributor account managers and category managers at it. It's pretty mind blowing. So we are so grateful to the KeHE team for partnering with us on this. And I hope you guys are just so excited because this is a massive opportunity. Honestly, there are a lot of very jelly people out there. So I'm really happy that you guys are here then also just to be really prepared. We know you have so many basic questions about KeHE since none of you guys are currently working with KeHE. And that's the point today is just try to understand what is this process like? And like in an ideal world where I get to then work with KeHE, how do I do that the best way? You've got me and Alex from my team and Quinn here, and we'll be facilitating a little bit. I have to drop around halfway through, but Quinn will stick around for that. And we will just be peppering Tim with questions. And if you have questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat. We may try to come around to them at the end, and we aren't going to get to everything, but let's see how it goes. So Tim, just to kick right off, who is Tim?
Well, first of all, thanks everybody for partnering with us to do this grocery run. We're really excited to meet all of you in Denver and continue the partnership with Startup CPG. So, but I'm Tim Dornfeld. I'm a director of category management at KeHE. So I've been with KeHE, over 6 years now, which is hard to believe. The time has absolutely flown. But I've held a few roles there. I started out actually as a category manager. I manage pet food and general merchandise and household cleaners, and then I spent 2 years after that as a senior category manager managing the shelf-stable beverage category. That's actually where Daniel and I met when he was back in his past life as well. Then moved into the director's role about 3 years ago. So I manage a team of category managers and just have the privilege of leading a team of just like really passionate, excited people, category experts that hopefully you'll get a chance to meet here at the grocery run. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for everybody's time.
It is a team of good people. I've had such a great time getting to know a lot of the category managers over the years who are they are rooting for all of you guys. Believe me. And sometimes they will seek you out. They're like, no, I'm like, we're going to do this together. Okay, Tim, what is KeHE for somebody who is not so familiar?
Yeah, so KeHE is the largest pure play natural distributor. We specialize in organic, specialty natural foods. We work with, it'd probably be faster to name the supply or the retailers that we don't work with. But, when you think about some of our largest customers, you think Sprouts, Albertsons, Publix, Infra, getting into the alternative channel now, starting to get into, things like convenience and expanding into, more, you can find us like on the go at the airport, things like that. So there's a number of different places that we can help your brand get to, but, where our bread and butter really truly is around, the grocery channel. And again, we want to be the leader when it comes to those natural, organic, and specialty items that our retail partners are looking for.
All right. And for anybody who doesn't know all of the accounts, you can actually look through a lot of them on our retail tracker that we have released. Probably you guys saw us making some noise about this last week, but we do have a list in that tracker. You can actually see which of them will work with KeHE. It's so many that you have access to. So Tim, for an early brand, they're like, what does it mean to get to work? Like, okay, how do I just get to start working with you, or how do we actually get that going? And then I want to follow that up to talk about how can you grow your brand with KeHE? So how does a brand get to on board with you?
Yeah, there's a couple different routes. Probably the easiest way, and I say that, it's probably a loaded way to say easiest, but if you've got, retail requests, right? So let's just say, we can use Sprouts or Fresh Time as an example, right? If they have come across your product and they want to bring it into into their store, they will often come to KeHE as their primary and say, hey, we would like to bring this brand in and we would like you to distribute it, right? And so with that, we will onboard you and get you set up in the DCs that, distribute to that specific retailer. And from there you can grow. Some other avenues to get in with KeHE, obviously doing something like the grocery run and being exposed to a category manager or a buyer is certainly a way to do it. Our category managers are always out there foraging, looking for new products. So they may see you at a show, and it doesn't have to be one of the big giant ones like Expo West or even those. I mean, we do a ton of work with ECRM and our folks are out at just a bunch of the industry events and things. So we may come across you that way as well. We also have a program called our Trend Finder events, and this is where we partner with RangeMe, and it's an opportunity we do 4 a year where our category managers meet with new and emerging brands, and some lucky brands get a golden ticket, and that will get them onboarded with KeHE. So there's a couple different ways that can happen, but a lot of times it will either be our category manager has found you, or one of our retail partners has also found you and wants us to be your source of distribution.
And probably the category managers are looking at brands the same way that buyers would, of like, yeah, what are the needs that are out there right now? What are the trends? Oh, is this like a, piece of white space or a brand that's going to be really appealing to our customers? So maybe I figure out a way to start working with them, even if they don't have one of those anchor accounts like you mentioned.
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, as category managers, right, we are always looking for the next best thing. And it could be in categories or trends that are already in full swing, or the ones that they're taking a bet that says, I think this is where the industry is going, right? And a big part of their job is to identify those future trends and those future white spaces and find the brands that then we can bring to our retail partners and our sales team to say, hey, we think this is where the industry is going. We've got a few brands, please present them to your retailers. And so we'll do that. They also, when it just comes to that sort of thing as well, is, they're also looking to, one thing I want to definitely stress for all the brands on here, especially since you're newer ones, our category managers are going to also take a lot of time, just like you said, Daniel, like retailers do. We want to make sure you're also ready. So one of the things I want to stress about KeHE is we are a national distributor, and we service over 30,000 doors in the U.S., right? So there is an opportunity to scale very quickly. That can be a great thing. That can also be not such a great thing, depending on where you are in the life cycle of your brand and just the resources or the infrastructure that you have built. So there are definitely times where we see a brand that we think is going to be a phenomenal brand, but the answer is it's not going to necessarily be no, but it's maybe no, not yet. And so I definitely want to stress that if you meet with one of our category managers and at the time they just say, hey, we're not, you're not ready yet. Again, that's a no for right now. It's not a no forever. So don't get discouraged. I mean, feel free to be disappointed if they say no, but know that you're going to also get some advice on, hey, these are the steps that I would take to make sure that you're in a good spot. And just remember that our team wants to see your brand succeed. It's good for us. It's good for our retailers. It's good for you as well. And so there's a lot of care and consideration taken before we bring brands on. And so a lot of the things that we'll kind of think about and look at is, do you have a sales team that's ready to go out there and expand within our distribution centers? What you really don't want to do is come in with KeHE with one retailer and essentially that's put all your eggs in that one basket, right? Because if that retailer delists you, you're at risk for discontinuation. So, do you have that sales team that's going to be able to go out there, knock on doors, expand your distribution to keep you in the distribution center? Do you have the infrastructure from a finance spot to run the promotions and the different things that retailers are going to ask of you, that KeHE's going to ask of you to help support and grow your brand? Do you have the manufacturing and the supply chain and the operations to be able to quickly scale if one of our larger customers comes across you in the DC and wants to bring you on board with them as well? So there's a lot of things that above and beyond just, is this a cool product? Is it innovative? Do I love the taste? Do I love the packaging? All that stuff is important, but the people behind the brand or the infrastructure or this, how the brand is set up also plays a big part in who we onboard and when.
Okay, that's really helpful. And so, Tim, let's say that of all the people watching this,
Yeah.
a certain percentage of them are very well funded. When I was a brand, I was very fortunate to be in a position where it was privately funded and we had the money to go, like, yeah, we want Fresh Time and Sprouts. We're ready to go. Like, we want all the DCs. But there are plenty of brands also that are not in that situation. Like, maybe they're more bootstrapped and they want to grow, but they also maybe even consciously want to grow a little bit more conservatively. Like, no, I want to get into one KeHE DC and like really do well there and grow it in my backyard and then keep growing with you guys. Is that okay too? Is that an okay conversation to have with a category manager? Or are they going to be like, oh, if you don't want to go national and you don't have all that money, I don't know.
No, it's definitely a conversation that you can have, right? And I think it's part of, working with our category manager to outline what is your strategy, where do you want to go, how do you want to grow, and there are definitely opportunities. We have brands that are in one DC, but there's also the flip side of this. Sometimes there are a lot of other like smaller regional distribution companies that are out there that can also serve that purpose for you and may actually in the short term be the better of the two options, right? So, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you just, have the conversation with our category manager. It doesn't mean that we're not going to bring you on, but, they're going to give you an honest assessment of what they see and what they think the opportunity is. And, so again, I think just going back, there's no one right or wrong way to come into KeHE, right? Everything is dependent, and just kind of be open and honest about where you're at and what you want to do. And it allows our category team to make that decision and put you in the best setup for success within, our system and the way that we work.
Great answer. Thank you. And we do have a list of all these distributors, by the way, on our website, in case anyone wants to see a lot of those more regional options or DSD options. But yeah, you won't find other retailers if your like ambition is to scale nationally quickly, like, you're in the right place. So, okay, fast forward to our event. What advice do we have for brands at our event? I mean, I think the obvious part is like, show up, do a great job, be filled with enthusiasm. So just so the brands know, we're going to try to share a list of all the retailers that have confirmed they're coming to the event, but also like the KeHE team itself is so like influential. I'll also just say, like, I love the KeHE team. It's a B Corp. They're great people and they all can advocate for you. And you never know if you're talking to one of their account managers who actually is like the buyer's right-hand person who can just make it happen for you. So my tips would be just like, whoever you're talking to at this thing is probably very influential, and they're also going to be voting on who they think should be picked up. So do a good job that way. What else, Tim?
Yeah, I think, if sampling's a lot, bring samples, right? I mean, again, it's a food, I mean, we're in the food industry, right? People want to touch, taste, smell, your product, right? That's probably the best way to sell it in a lot of ways. I think like Daniel said, like, don't be sitting in your booth answering emails, right? Be out there talking, don't necessarily tackle a buyer in the aisle, but, engage with them and just, again, tell your brand story, right? And I think kind of, what is your vision? What's your goal? Where, what makes you different too? I think that's a big thing when you're thinking about storytelling, right? And so much of what we do in CPG is storytelling, right? Why, and I think even some more advice is like, again, so much of this is like real estate transactions, right? Like that shelf space is all just a real estate transaction. So why does your brand deserve that real estate over, the other brands that are either already out there or that are, nipping at your heels or all of that stuff, right? So like, I think just having that kind of coherent narrative or story about why your brand's exciting, show your passion, show that you're ready to get out there and work. And I think just have fun with it. But I think, Daniel, you hit on it too, is that, just because maybe you didn't see necessarily the buyer that you wanted when you were there, right? Maybe you saw the KeHE Growth Solutions manager, right? Who does all of our, category reviews for retailer specific, or you came across like one of our territory managers or account managers, like they can be powerful advocates for you as well. So there's a lot of different people. And what a great thing about the KeHE shows, and I think what, when we get the great feedback for them, and this is kind of an offshoot of that, is just the number of different people that you get to talk to, whether it's the actual buyer or store owner or the KeHE account manager, territory manager, growth solutions folks, supply chain folks. There's just so many people that you can meet and talk to and learn from and sell to. So yeah, just be ready to go. Just the more interaction you can have, the better.
I love that. Honestly, even if this opportunity were only to get in front of the KeHE team, I would still do it and still have the same excitement about it, because this is true. Like, the growth solutions team can go and pitch you to Sprouts, like, and they're doing it in ways that you wouldn't be able to do it directly to the retailer. And I also really like that analogy, by the way, about the real estate. I have never thought about it that way, but it's almost like, you've got like someone who owns the mall and you're pitching why you should get, if they have, but they have a percentage that they take commission of every single store
Right,
there. And so you're trying to convince them like, no, we're going to do really well. And here's why also it's better than other things, because it's all incremental. We're going to add all this new stuff that'll help you make more money total. So I like that. I like that one a lot. And then also, like, I've had a lot of success even talking to a KeHE account manager. They get excited about it, and then they'll like text their buyer contact to come over and look at it, or they'll take a picture, or they'll give you the email. So I really hope everybody works that angle very hard. And they're really are just good people though. KeHE, they're all so passionate about brands. They love what they do. So I'm really excited for everyone to see them. What are mistakes that you've seen brands make as they, let's say, you get to work with KeHE, maybe you get one of those anchor accounts here, because a lot of these buyers are looking for first to market, or you can figure out how to open up a DC, or you get into one of these programs. How can it go badly if a brand does what?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways it can go sideways on you pretty quickly. So I think a lot of times not having a plan is the biggest one, right? Like, and not understanding, I guess, where you are or how quickly you can expand. Where I've seen, it's the biggest, I think the biggest mistake folks make is the overpromise, underdeliver, right? And so I 100% understand the buying that the brand, like, this is your baby. This is what you have grown, right? The hardest thing in the world is to say no to an opportunity. But there are some times where maybe the opportunity is a little bigger than where you're at, right? And, retail can be pretty unforgiving. So, a botched launch or repeated operations issue, you can lose distribution pretty quickly, and they'll move on to the next brand because there are so many brands out there. So where I've seen folks get into trouble is like too much too soon. They maybe, we have a program. I'll use this kind of, I think maybe this is a good way to kind of use an example. It's kind of general, but it kind of shows how it can go. So we have a program called New at KeHE, and it's our launch program for new items and new brands at KeHE. And what it does is it allows you to open up a distribution center without having like an anchor account there. And it's a 2-month program where, in the first month, independent stores for KeHE can buy your product for 50% off. And then month 2, they can buy for 25% off. And I think a good example of where it can go wrong is, you could do up to 8 to 10 DCs, right? And so there are some brands like, absolutely, I'm doing every DC possible. But they don't have people on the street or a broker or somebody that can follow up on it, right? So they spread themselves across the country. They can't cover it. And then here they've made this big investment in the program, but they don't have the resources to follow up on it. And I think the best piece of advice that I can give you is when you're thinking about your strategy is it's never how can I get on the shelf? It's how do I stay on the shelf? And staying on the shelf, so much of that is around operational excellence. It's about having a great product. It's about having the proper promotional program. It's about having the people that can follow up to make sure that you're executing, to keep your retailers happy, and ultimately have your product where the customer can buy it. So when I've seen customers run into problems, it's when they don't have all of that buttoned up, and they don't have then a plan when things don't go as they originally thought. And then they start getting hit with, deductions, TPRs, all of the costs that are associated with working with retailers, distributors, and just being in CPG. If you don't have then that velocity to keep cash flow going, to keep you on the shelf, like, you can run into problems really quickly.
That is a very pro answer, Tim. And the strategy part, just starting with a strategy. If so, I hope that all of the brands here, which it's not going to happen, but if this would be the most amazing thing in the world, is if you all showed up with knowing exactly what your strategy is. Like, this is the region that I want. This is what I'm willing to say yes to. This is what I don't actually want. Like, to have that very clear. Part of the reason why it won't happen is because like it's good to have that strategy, but then also know like where you might be flexible, because you might come in saying like, no, I'm only going to come in and I want to launch on the innovation set with Sprouts, but you might not get that. And you might get something else that's pretty good too. And like, okay, maybe we'll shift our strategy a little bit, because then we're going to open up this other DC and then we'll focus on that. But I totally agree with you of just, yeah, if you have, especially if you're very ambitious and you have high growth targets, you may be tempted just to spread yourself out really thin. And you can do that. That new at KeHE program is amazing, especially if you're like really looking for help to open up a core DC, and then you're going to go and hit all those retailers around it. And then you're set up, you're ready to go. Because buyers will always ask you, are you set up in the DC? Yeah. And it takes a little bit of time too to get your like KeHE codes. But if you just give everybody in the world 50% off a product, they'll take it. And that's sort of, and then if it doesn't really move, that because you haven't created actual demand and you're not like really running programs with those accounts and supporting the business, then that is a very expensive donation that you have made out there. So I really love that you hit hard on the strategy point. And I really encourage everyone to look through that retailer list that we have also and think carefully about that. Like, yeah, who are my targets here? What DCs am I really trying to open up? If you can go there, I would say if there's one thing that you can do is go to this event knowing which DCs you're trying to focus on and which are the prominent accounts in those DCs where if you could get them, that you'd be in good shape. Does that sound good, Tim? Anything to add?
Yeah, one thing I would add to that too is just also as you're, whether it be entering an agreement with a distributor or retail, like really understand what are the requirements. And that could be from, what are the promotional requirements? What are the, free fill or merchandising requirements? What are the programs that they're going to ask? And what is that going to cost you? And to really do the math on it. Like, do you have the margin built in to support all of that as well? Because, again, it's promotion in a lot of ways is key. Smart promotion. Let me, kind of say that as well, right? Targeted promotions, but there's going to be a lot asked of you financially as you're trying to grow within the retail. So understand fully what is going to be asked of me. Don't wait for the deductions to come back and hit and go, oh man, this costs a lot more than I thought it was going to. Seemed like a good idea at the time, right? So really just ask those questions. They'll tell you, everybody will tell you what the expectations are. Just make sure you understand them and that you've got, the funding or the infrastructure to support them.
I love it. Yeah. And in our spreadsheet, we do have some of the costs with some of those retailers. We don't have it all. We're still working on it. But yeah, good to know. I mean, there are accounts like Albertson Safeway that KeHE does work with a lot of those banners, maybe all of them. I don't know. But like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for a very early stage brand because their slotting costs are quite high and the velocities are a little bit lower. And like, if you're not a really established brand, it's going to be hard to do well there. And so but you like, oh, like Albertson Safeway, of course I want that. That's a big deal. Like, well, like think about it. It might be like actually more appropriate later stage for you. So, by the way, now it would be a good time for people to start maybe dropping any questions that you have that we're not getting to quite yet into the chat. I'm going to ask one more here and then I'm going to pass it over to my man Quinn to finish up with you guys. So what options do you think people can work with KeHE on? Like things that they should really take advantage of KeHE programs if they are lucky enough to get in to help them grow. I know you mentioned like some of those things you can apply to, like, Trend Finder and New at KeHE. Yep. I know there are a bunch of other things. Like when I was a brand, I got into your Care Trade program, right, yep, which I think is the hardest thing to get into in my mind because you recognize 5 brands a year. Yep. Exactly. Who do the most on mission. And I was like teaching a national program in public schools. I was like lobbying I was like at the KeHE show talking to everybody about it, like trying to get into that. But can you just talk about some of the different options, whether these programs yep, or specific marketing things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have our Care Trade and our diverse trade programs. I'll start with those. So Care Trade is for that. Yeah, it is very select. It is 5 brands a year. So at any given time, we might have as many as 10 because it's a 2-year program. These are for brands that have just a truly unique and special social mission tied to their brand. And so if you're out there doing something to make your community better through food, and you think it's just something that nobody else has thought of or is doing, like, Care Trade may be the thing for you. We also, have our diverse trade program. So this is for brands that are, run by people of color, women, military veterans, LGBTQ plus, and again, the idea there is we want to help to support those brands that maybe have historically been underrepresented or, underfunded or anything along those lines as well. We want to make sure that we're giving them a platform as well. So that's another 2-year program that's available. So if you have your certification on those, you can apply to become a diverse trade brand. And with those, there is like some discounting on advertising fees, and there's features, and we really try to elevate those brands as well. Having said the word elevate, I guess I'll just jump right into our Elevate program as well. So Elevate is a 2-year high touch program that is driven by our category managers. And if our category managers are out there and they see a brand that they think is just the next cutting edge brand, or setting a new trend, or something they haven't seen, or just something that they are really excited about, they can invite these brands to be part of our Elevate program. Within the Elevate program, there's, again, we really try to highlight these brands. It's high touch. So you do a lot of meetings with your category manager. One thing I will say about Elevate is we do provide a lot of financial assistance, but the ask on the back end is also that you are also contributing as well. That means like having full promotional plans with us, attending our different shows, doing the different events as well. So again, everybody says I want to be an Elevate, but then sometimes when they kind of realize what that means, it may not be for everyone, but it's certainly a conversation you could have with your category managers. You're going through that process. So those are a couple of like our programs that are out there. I mentioned our new KeHE program is a great launch program. You can try to apply with us by joining one of our Trend Finder events. It's a great way to get your foot in the door. One of the things I'll tell you about the Trend Finder event too, which is great, is, and again, the idea there is to really find those new and emerging brands that maybe you wouldn't come across in other places because they're just not ready yet. There are a number of stories and a number of times when I was a category manager, when I would meet with a brand at Trend Finder, and in that moment, they were not ready for KeHE. And I would walk through kind of why and give my reasoning for it. And there were a number of times where 6, 9, 12 months later, circle back around with that brand. They reached back out to me and said, "Hey, Tim, hey, we've done this, this, and this. We think we're ready to go." And then that brand, gets brought on. So the great thing about doing a Trend Finder event is it's almost like getting almost like a free consulting session with a KeHE category manager, right? Kind of get maybe some of the answers to the questions that you're asking on how do I get into KeHE, and also it's a way to get your brand in front of us as well. So those are just some of the programs that are out there to help help to support those newer and emerging brands, because that truly is the lifeblood of KeHE. That's how we continue to grow, because a lot of brands, they get too big and they go direct, and we have to constantly refill the pipeline there. And so innovation is truly what continues to drive our growth.
I love it. I'm going to pass over to Quinn to continue because I've got to hop. But one resource I wanted to post. A few of you guys are asking about costs, which maybe Quinn can ask Tim to give just some of the high levels. But we also did a webinar where we talked about just generally what are the costs involved in growing with distributors. So I just posted a link to that. That'll have some more kind of detailed info for those of you looking. So yes, let me pass it over to Quinn. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys. Tim, thank you so much. You're the best.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it. All right, keep going. Enjoy, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. I guess we should probably just transition over to some of the questions that the folks in the chat have asked. Like Daniel said, a number of them are relating to cost. I can actually show them and pop them up on screen here. We have some more specific stuff, but Jeff is asking just like at a high level, just what some costs that we might not know about in working with KeHE.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about the margins that you want to build in when you're working with a distributor and KeHE in general, we often will tell people you want to probably have 40 to 50 points of margin built in, and that's going to go to a few different places when one, there's the markup of us being able to sell it to our customer. there's the promotional aspect of it. But a few of the costs that you're going to see, and I'll just kind of talk about some of the common costs. And, if you do a Google search, you can probably find them out there. Our contracts are out there in the open. But so there's a couple things. So there's the first thing is our Connect BI allowance, and that is a 2% off invoice allowance. Now, what I would tell you is the amount of data and information that you're going to get from utilizing our Connect BI, in my opinion, it truly separates KeHE from a lot of the distributors out there. You're going to have all of the sales, inventory, supply chain, like anything that you need to help run your business through KeHE from a data perspective is going to be within our Connect BI website and that we provide to you. So, but that 2% also goes to, to fund that so we can keep that moving. Our standard terms are 2%, 10 days, net 30. So what does that mean? If we pay you back after, within 10 days of when your PO lands, there's a 2% off invoice that comes off of there as well. Otherwise, you will be paid between 11 and 30 days after that. Some of the other common fees that are out there, a lot of people so I think another thing to keep in mind is when people are looking at their financials with their distributor, they will, and you probably heard horror stories about deductions and just the cost of it. Over 70% of deductions that come back to a supplier from like a distributor like KeHE are usually actually retail charges that we are passing on to you. So one of the services, so we provide services to you as suppliers, but we also provide services to our retail partners. One of the services that we provide to our retail partners is we actually will pass through deductions. So that could be anything from slotting fees to scan backs, manual chargebacks, programs. If let's say you pay $2,000 to be at a store grand opening, like that can be charged back through KeHE to you. So, and with a lot of those charges, because we are, playing the bank on that, there is like an 8% charge on the cost, whatever. So let's just say it's like a, 100, if just say it's $100 charge back, there's going to be an 8% on that. Right. So those can start to add up a little bit as well. There's going to be, trying to think of some of the other stuff, there's obviously, there are fill rates, levels of fill rate and different things. So like if you're shorting us, if there's unloading discrepancies, there's lumper fees, like all of those things you'll have to take into account as well. All of these fees and everything that's tied to it is all, whether it be in our contract, in our inbound routing guide, it's all there as you're doing the setup. What I cannot stress enough, take the time to go through and read it, understand it, ask questions. We're not offended if you ask questions about why am I being charged this? Why is it? It's all part of the business. It's all part of our business model. It's part of doing business with a distributor. It's better if you understand it up front. So please take the time to understand what those charges are, because it can add up. And if you're not cognizant of them, or if you're not, again, going back to that idea of strategy, if you're not planning for it, it can add up, and it can lead to unproductive spend, which that's not good for anybody. It's, nobody wants to see that, because then you're not selling as much, you're not promoting as much, all of that. So that's kind of a high level, on some of the fees and different charges that deal with it.
And we'll send this out to everybody so you can rewatch that and you can play it back, kind of if you're
Right.
you want to go into it a little bit more. But yeah, read the contracts. I feel like that's
100%.
definitely the biggest takeaway. I think you probably answered this question already in your last question. Essentially, they're asking just, do you get hit with the fee if delivery is slightly less than full truckload? I would assume, just based off of your last answer, that the answer to that question is yes.
Question: we offer semi-truckloads. So a lot of that is going to all be based on essentially what was in the PO versus what you delivered, right? So it's so if it gets, again, and what we have is like 95% is the required level of supply chain, and that's actually fill rate, and that's inbound fill rate, and that's actually over the course of a quarter, right? So the other thing that just so you know, is we don't do it off of every single PO, right? So what we'll do is at the end of a quarter, we'll take a look to see what your fill rate was over that quarter, and if you dip below our, you'll be fined off of that quarter number versus each individual one, because we do understand things are going to happen from time to time, right? But what we're trying to avoid is like systematic systematic issues where, you're not filling up to the rates that you're required. So I probably have to look a little bit closer at, getting into the specific of the eggs. But I mean, generally the way that it's going to work is based on, if we order 100 cases, your fill rate's going to be based on that 100 cases that was on the PO.
Gotcha. And then for the next question, essentially it boils down to, how does KeHE think about flexibility or customization for younger brands? I think some of the programs that you mentioned probably.
Yeah, so this is a great question. I'm glad you asked this, and I'm kicking myself now for not mentioning it earlier. But we actually have our administrative, our new AAP program. And this is designed for brands that are with KeHE for the first year. And so rather than doing things like new item, so there's when you put a new item into a KeHE DC, there's a 15% new item allowance that gets tied to that, right? So if you're on the AAP program, what we've done is we've actually created a 2% fixed off invoice for that first year. And this is 100% an optional program. You would have to opt into this as a new brand. It's generally open for brands that we think are going to do like $500,000 or less in the first year, right? So it's truly to help those small and emerging brands. If you opt into it, you're going to have a 2%, a 2% off invoice coming off of all of your POs for that first year. But what you're not going to pay for is, you're not going to pay for things like new item slotting for KeHE. Now, if you have it for a retailer, you're still going to pay for anything that gets passed through. But yeah, it's things like new item allowance, new item setup fees, some different things like that. And the idea there is, like, a lot of times those fees hit newer brands like when they're first starting up, right? And it just can wreak havoc with cash flow. What we do by just spreading it out 2% over the course of that first year is it allows you some cost certainty. It allows you to be able to plan, and it's not kind of the ups and downs. It's, what your costs are going to be for that first year, help you get your feet under you, kind of understand what it looks like to do business with KeHE. So that was the program we came up with, kind of exactly for what you're talking about there. So you're not just hit with that avalanche of at least fees from KeHE. Again, any retailer fees are still going to apply.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And I think, this bleeds into it, the AAP program. Somebody was asking if deductions are waived as a part of that as well.
Some deductions are, again, anything that's a retailer one. But yeah, so you're definitely going to see, like I said, new item allowance. There's some manual chargeback fees. There's kind of some administrative setup stuff that's going to be waived in the first year.
Okay, gotcha. Good to know. And then another contract-related question here, just given that we're asking and telling people to read the contracts, what does kind of negotiation on those contracts look like? Can brands negotiate the buyback period, free fills, et cetera, within that?
So generally, our contract, there's not a ton of room for negotiation. There are some things that we can be flexible on, and what you would. So when you're onboarding with KeHE, you're going to essentially meet with two people: your category manager. Category manager's job is to help you with, new item setup, strategy, growth, retailers, things like that. There's also our supplier manager, and they're kind of like our category manager's counterparts. Their job is to help you with anything around financials, inbound routing guide, any of our policies and procedures, financials, deductions, things like that. So when you're in the onboarding process, you'll probably have a meeting with that supplier manager. You can certainly ask them. You can tell them, hey, the things you'd want to deduct. They would be able to tell you what they can and can't. Again, there's not a lot of things that we generally try to or will negotiate on with that. They're pretty standard terms, but there are some things where if strategically there's a reason, we can look into it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. This is a good question here. Can you share a story of a startup that worked with KeHE that requested a slow rollout?
That's a good question. So I'm trying to think of where I've seen one of those. So what I would say to that, I'll kind of talk generally about what the strategy for that is. So I think if you're looking for a slow rollout, what you would want to do is, I think the brands that have done that are the ones that maybe they're smaller and they're regional, right? So for instance, I'll use like our DC 19 down in Dallas, Texas, right? It's a pretty good one. There's some pretty strong customers that pull out of there, whether it be HEB, Central Market, United, Sprouts pulls out of there. But if you can find one of those DCs that has a good combination of chain accounts and independent accounts. So when you think of the way that the DC or KeHE's DCs are set up, not all of our DCs have independent retailers pulling from them. There are some that are just for, whether it be Sprouts or Albertsons, Publix. And so if you can find one, whether it be, DC 19 down in Dallas, we have our DC 18 up here in Romeoville outside of Chicago. Like those are a couple one, or DC 41 down in Southern California, right? Those all have really strong independent bases. And so what a brand could do if they wanted to do a slower rollout is they could target, maybe one or two of those DCs and really try to grow through the independent channel. And that can be working. And again, the thing to think about with like independence for us is that can be, a 1 or 2 store mom and pop. That could also be a 30 or 40 store infra chain as well, right? So the independent can do a lot of work within our kind of parlance, if you will. But so you could really, what you could do is I think you could look at an opportunity to really grow regionally versus trying to get into like a Sprouts or an Albertsons or even a Publix that's going to take you 3-4 DCs. And what you're going to want to do there is you're going to want to find that mix of like smaller, medium, and larger independents that can continue to drive velocity. Because the challenge that you're going to run into is if you really want to go slowly with us is our DCs have a finite amount of space in there. And it goes back to that real estate comment. And with the amount of growth that we have seen, just to be transparent right now, our DCs are pretty stocked. And so the items that are going to stay in the DCs right now are the ones that have some velocity or are so unique that, they fill a specific need for a category manager and they're able to protect them. So if you're going to do the slow rollout, the key there is to really focus on like 1 or 2 DCs that you can drive strong velocities in to make sure that you stay within that DC.
That's good insight. Question on more fees here. Are the free fills charged back at full wholesale on retailer cost or on the list cost to KeHE?
So generally that's going to be based on wholesale costing.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And then here's a question. Any major differences between working with DCs in the US versus Canada?
Yeah, the big one being that our Canadian DCs are all run by our kind of sister company, Tree of Life. So like me here as a KeHE employee, I don't actually work with any of our Canadian DCs. So if you were looking to expand in Canada, you would want to work with our sister company, Tree of Life.
Cool. I think that's pretty much all of the questions that we had from the brands here. I know that we're going to be posting this and we'll be sending out a list of the retailers for the event next week. And if there's any additional questions that come up from like the brand side too, feel free to drop them in the closed Slack channel that we have. Our team is happy to kind of source some of the answers. And we also have a lot of content that we've just done with KeHE in the past to kind of help build that round out picture and like that initial strategy for next week. But if there was nothing else kind of on this side, maybe any final words to leave the brands with, Tim, before seeing them next week?
I just want to say again, thank you for partnering with us and with Startup CPG to make this work. This is the first time we've partnered on an event together, and so we definitely can't do it without the supplier community. So I know my team is really excited to getting a chance to meet you all and learn about your brands and see what that next wave of innovation is going to look like. So like I said, just become ready to engage and tell us about what makes you special and why we can't pass up on you. And feel free to ask a lot of questions. Just be curious. And, I think it's going to be a great event. I think you're going to find you're going to get a lot of really good exposure out there and kind of a good way to learn a little bit more about us and what we bring to the table.
Yeah, this conversation has been great. Really appreciate kind of all of the detailed insight that, you've been able to provide for people here. And that's just kind of like a little preview into what it'll look like next week and all the additional questions that I'm sure the brands will be chatting with and bringing them up during the conversation. I know Alex and I are excited on the Startup CPG side to get this event up and running. So with that, I think we'll leave it back to everybody to get ready and prepare for next week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys.